Hey, we are those guys. You see these guys over there? Well, what about those guys right here? I'm Alex Hardy, joined as always by my former NFL partner in crime, 10 years in the National Football League. He is Nick Ferguson. Nick Ferguson, week 4 is in the books. We're going to look ahead to an exciting week 5. What is going on, my brother?
Yeah, man, it's fun time here in the Mile High City. The Broncos get the dub
Mm-hmm.
against a team that I would like to say that they're decimated by injuries, but I can't. But they have the biggest injury to the player who's making the most impact, or would have the most impact in their quarterback, Joe Burrow. But man, that team looked beat down. They looked all out of sorts, no sense of urgency. But either way, you play who's on the schedule, and the Broncos get the dub.
So we'll start with your Broncos because I think I can't say the word tease. That is the radio industry term, which does carry over to podcasting. But I was very overt and clear about how awful that double night, double header on Monday night was going to be, and it exceeded my low expectations. We had the Jets unable to beat a depleted Miami Dolphins team. We'll get to that, but let's start with your Broncos. Look, losing Joe Burrow is one thing. Being able to affect the quarterback when you're rushing 3 against 6 on the offensive line is a whole nother story. So the offensive line for the Bengals, awful. The defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. Was this a get-right game for Bo Nix? Do you feel more confident, or does the kind of success you have against a team like Cincinnati may not value as much as maybe an opponent like Philadelphia waiting for them week 5?
Well, Alex, it does validate what I anticipate the Broncos would do against an opponent, dare I say, inferior to the Denver Broncos without
Agreed.
Joe Burrow. Because you look at some of the throws that Jake Browning tossed against the Broncos, especially to T. Higgins, and you got to think if that's Joe Burrow, there might have been better ball placement. So now you're talking about moving the sticks at a high rate. Then also, on the offensive side of the ball, the Bengals can't run the ball. And you're thinking, okay, well, Lou Anarumo was their defensive coordinator last year, and he didn't do too well against the Broncos or let alone anyone, but you got Zach Taylor there, right? You figured that he would come up with creative ways, screen game, to get some RGP Ryan touches, Chase Brown touches, but more importantly, Mike Gesicki or even Jamar Chase. They tried to move him around and get him off the ball and run some kind of, wide receiver screens where they get everyone else to block in front of him and just slide him underneath the coverage. But they didn't go to that too often. And it just seemed really, really bad, man. And I feel sorry for Jamar Chase and those fantasy owners who have Jamar Chase on their fantasy roster. You may want to put him on the bench, or you may want to look to trade him until Joe Burrow comes back. But this was a game, Alex, I anticipated the Broncos to win. But I will have to say, going into the game, being as though the Bengals had their backs against the corner, it was Monday Night Football, I did look at it initially as a trap game for the Denver Broncos.
Right, and look, from a pure fantasy perspective, Jamar Chase was likely the first overall pick in your draft. T. Higgins, Chase Brown, Joe Burrow, all high draft selections, and none, Joe Burrow, obviously due to injury, are going to pay off that ADP that they had coming in to the season. And it's just the whole thing falling apart like a house of cards because they allocated so much money to Burrow, who's not there, and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. It's about having a well-rounded football team, and these contract extensions aren't even fully kicked in yet. So when you're allocating 35, 40% of the cap to these 3 individuals, availability is your best ability. And we saw Jake Browning effective, but not, we considered him one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league. And now what we have here, because of their inability to build the rest of the roster around those highly paid players, it's dead on arrival. You thought they could stay afloat, but when Joe Burrow comes back, do they slow play this? Do they have a new head coach by then? I just don't know, what this outlook for the Bengals are as their window to contend gets shut more and more each and every week. So
Well,
I'm just a little bit lost on Cincinnati, and we'll get to Baltimore too, but this AFC North is not the juggernaut we expected it to be.
no, it's not. And the great equalizer for every team, every single year, is injuries. You cross your fingers and you hope that it's someone else's problem, not yours, because you can't wrap players and bubble wrap. You just have to make sure you have adequate depth. If this is teaching anyone anything, and I'm not breaking any news, but the idea is that you don't really know how good you are until you get to your backup quarterback. And I've always said this, while we constantly talk about the starting quarterback being the most important player on any team, I said,
any sport.
Yes, that is true to a certain extent until he gets injured. And the next person, who probably is the most important player, is the backup quarterback, which Joe Burrow is going through it now with the Cincinnati Bengals with Jake Browning. The Baltimore Ravens have been through this before, but they've never been at this point being 1-3. And your defense, just like the Cincinnati Bengals defense, can't really stop anyone. That's not Ravens football. That's not Ravens football.
Right. And we'll get to Baltimore. We'll close on Monday Night Football because we had a battle of teams who were clamoring, hoping to fall over backwards and at best become 1-3. Miami Dolphins were able to do that against the New York Jets. And I don't have a whole lot else to add except, Nick, Aaron Glenn, your guy, former teammate in Houston, a former New York Jet with you as well, he came in saying that this is not the same old Jets. And, well, he was right. This is worse than the same old Jets. He has the opportunity to become the first Jet coach to go 0-5 to begin their tenure as a first-time head coach with that organization. I mean, a defense that played that played well enough, top half defense last year, has been among the league's worst so far in 2025.
Well, yeah, and then Sauce Gardner was saying, okay, well, he felt as though he was, not being judged fairly by the officials because his team isn't winning a lot of games, and he looked at other players, and he's saying, well, those players, because they're on teams with winning records, the officials give them the benefit of the doubt. Me, on the other hand, no, they are calling every single thing. And I'll say this, in all fairness to the referees, I think the referees have a tough job, but I will employ Sauce Gardner to go back and watch all of his plays to see if maybe at the top of the route he may grab a couple of times. So maybe that's something that he needs to be accountable for himself. Taking off with the Jets team was going to be very difficult for Aaron Glenn to begin with. Here's a team that drafted you in the first round out of Texas A&M. You're in the city of New York where you play, and that New York media is entirely different from any other media market around. And the Jets fans competing with the Giants fans for which team can lose the most game, but the Giants have upped the stakes. They just defeated, with a rookie quarterback, the undefeated Los Angeles Chargers. So the Giants are reigning supreme in New York City once again. Tough spot for Aaron Glenn. Will this be a season where they start off 0-5 or even get to 0-8? I don't know. That's a strong possibility. But it was going to be a very difficult haul for Aaron Glenn going back to New York and trying to win football games.
And on the other side, the big news, obviously, Tyreek Hill done for the year with a completely torn up knee. If you're listening on audio, thank goodness. If you're watching us on YouTube, you're also fine. There's no way I'm going to show that replay whatsoever. He's, according to Drew Rosenhaus, going to make a full go, age 32, try to come back next year, but it really leaves Miami in an interesting and particular situation. It's rare to have a former top 10 draft pick as your wide receiver 2, so I am kind of encouraged and excited to see Jalen Waddle kind of step up, but for who and for what? Because this Miami Dolphins team looked dead on arrival and happened to catch a brutal Jets team. There aren't too many wins on that schedule ahead of them, but encouraged to see what they can kind of build on and what players kind of audition for next season, frankly, because I'm not sure if Mike McDaniel's a part of the long-term plan, but the offenses look kind of stale. They still play way too light in the box compared to what other teams bring on the offensive side of the football. And, hey, we're clearing September, and once it gets a little colder out, we know what these Dolphins are all about. So not really a whole lot to take from that Monday game. I hope that they can salvage something, except of course those weeks they play New England. But I'm more interested. The Jets have an opportunity to get right against the Dallas Cowboys, who have a porous defense themselves, allowing 40 points and a tie, which was news to George Pickens. He becomes the latest Donovan McNabb to realize that you can tie in football. Jets Cowboys, I think, is where I want to start with Week 5. Dak Prescott, I think 2 weeks in a row, you could argue he had the kind of throw that was one of the best throws of his career, but getting absolutely nothing out of that defense. Meanwhile, they're able to spread the football, continue to run with a revitalized and a refreshed-looking Javonte Williams, and the offense is humming. I mean, they're missing CeeDee Lamb for at least a couple more weeks, but really encouraged by what the offense is doing, in part because the defense gets off the field quickly, usually after they allow 7.
Yeah, that game against the Green Bay Packers on Sunday night, man, that was one for the ages. I was so excited. I didn't have a dog in the fight, but just as a football fan, I just love to see, and normally I don't do this as a defensive player, right? A high-scoring game, but a lot of excitement, the back and forth, because it was like, well, who's going to win this game? It's going to come down to the team with the last possession. And just when you thought the Packers had it under wraps, then Dak moves the ball down the field. They get a great return, and then now it's back on the Packers, and you're thinking, well, maybe the Packers, can they pull it off? Can they not? And then the kicking game, once again, proved to be problematic on both sides.
Well, yeah. Let's back up a play because, Green Bay, they were the 2024 New Orleans Saints. They were far and away the best team in the National Football League through 2 weeks. And they scuffle and lose to the Browns and then are taken to the brink. I mean, honestly, bailed out by a Dallas clock operator, which, Nick, I think we're supposed to understand how home field advantage works. Somehow, Jordan Love gets 1 second after delaying the initial snap with the clock running. They're trying to get Matt LaFleur's play call in. 1 second left on the clock in order to get off the field and kick that field goal to force overtime. That ball gets tipped up in the air. It's zeros on the clock, and Dallas is walking away with that win. Granted, it's a tie for everyone else except for Jerry Jones because they neutralized Micah Parsons for the most part. And again, shocking to me, Jerry Jones has never kissed his sister. I'm thrilled he filled us in on that.
Well, here's the thing about that last play. There were so many things going on, and just like we were watching in great anticipation, I'm thinking the person operating the clock, they were so excited about the ending of the game that they forgot to allow that second to tick off the clock. But you know what? Let's go back to the Green Bay Packers. They failed to execute in that moment because, to me, you got to get 2 plays in. You have to understand situational football in that particular moment and have a second play to say, we don't convert and get the touchdown. We're running and racing back. We're sprinting back to the line of scrimmage to get another play. And you saw so many players kind of just meandering back. That was like 10 seconds that ticked off the clock. But I haven't checked on this just yet. But I was wondering who was the clock operator, and I was wondering, did Jerry fire them yet? So I'm not advocating for anyone to be fired, but it's just the idea. 1 second on the clock. How in the heck did that happen? And if my memory serves me correct, the Packers didn't really have any timeouts, did they?
No, that was it.
The incomplete pass stopped the clock.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yeah, because it was batted straight down on the ground. I'm saying that ball hovers if there's any kind of bobbling. All I can tell you, Sade, smooth operator, was not working that game that night, Nick. It just an absolute mess. But the Dallas Cowboys are more. I just don't. I don't see it.
Who's to say that divine intervention from the football gods came down and said, you know what? Let's make things a little more interesting. Because here's why I say that. You had the Micah Parsons, Jerry Jones, the whole thing. But the playoffs, the seeding, the wild card, this game is going to come back to bite one of these teams in their backside.
It's Green Bay because Dallas isn't sniffing the postseason, Nick.
Well, wait a minute. Whoa. Whoa. I mean, you were just talking about Dak Prescott and how well he played. Who's to say, with the chemistry he's building with George Pickens, you got Jake Ferguson. You were talking about Javonte Williams,
Mm-hmm.
who seemed like an entirely different running back in Schottenheimer's offense. And then you get CD back. This is what the Cowboys fans are thinking. Don't crush
Look,
their dreams right now.
this guy plays 10 years in the league, all of a sudden watches one football game and forgets his number one principle. Defense wins championships.
Listen, I know it does, but it makes sense, right? Just think about it. If it comes down to this again, where the wild card game, right, comes down to the Packers and the Cowboys. I know I'm a defensive guy, but tell me, as a football fan, you wouldn't love that.
I'll cue up the Netflix documentary, Jerry Jones crying the last time Green Bay spanked Dallas in the postseason, and we'll just replay that right here on Those Guys. I'm Alex Hardy. He's Nick Ferguson. We're talking about a couple of porous defenses in a 80-point tie on Sunday Night Football. Because they played, they really bailed out the Baltimore Ravens, who are now 1-3. We teased this a little bit earlier. The battle with Kansas City being completely one-sided. Not totally a surprise based on how horrible that defense has been. Now they have an opportunity to get right at home against the Houston Texans, an equally disappointing 1-3 team. Look, we did this a week ago with Kansas City, right? I'm so shocked that both Kansas City and Baltimore 1-2. Now, Houston and Baltimore both 1-3. How does that game kind of look out that despite the records, we figured this would be kind of a marquee game early on week 5?
Well, yeah, considering that these two teams met in the playoffs and Baltimore was able to kind of send the Houston Texans packing, but with the news that Lamar Jackson's expected to be out a couple of weeks with that hamstring.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
strange because that was
yeah.
reported locally in Baltimore, and we're with you now on Tuesday evening, so things could change, throughout the course of the week. If you're listening to this, later on, maybe things will change. But the Baltimore Sun reporting that Lamar Jackson, he's not going to be playing Sunday, and yet we haven't really seen a national outlet or an NFL insider report on it yet. So clearly, we talked about Cincinnati without Joe Burrow, but Baltimore without Lamar Jackson, could that even be worse?
Yeah, it can be because now you think about the timing and the rhythm, and all you have to do is look within the division. You just mentioned Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. Lamar Jackson was kind of the grease for that injury. Now, don't get me wrong.
The
They
reigning
still
MVP. That's all he is. Or
well,
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
they
Josh Allen. Josh Allen was
Josh
last year.
Allen. That's
2
right.
years ago, the
Yeah,
three-time MVP.
don't have
Yeah.
Bills fans mad with you. But the
I
highlight
honestly,
thing-
that's the second time I've made that same mistake on this pod, so they haven't come for me yet. Fool me twice. That's shame on you, Bills fans, Bills Mafia.
well, those Bills fans was like, that is just straight hate from a Patriots fan, right?
It's
But yet,
true. It's true.
yes. But yet I digress. But you still have talent on that Baltimore roster from an offensive standpoint with Derrick Henry. But now you're saying insert Cooper Rush. Now we've seen Cooper Rush actually win games as a member of the Dallas Cowboys offense. So I'm not going to write him off, but I'm just saying we're not going to expect him to do Lamar Jackson type of things. But this still is a Ravens team that feels as though, listen, they got a lot to prove. But in this particular game against the Texans, this could be 1-4 for the Baltimore Ravens. And they've never been in that position, not to my knowledge, under Coach Harbaugh.
Yeah, I mean a whole lot of first for Coach. And listen, we were complaining about him getting double-digit leads and blowing them to start this season. Now they're not even making that kind of progress.
Yeah.
We talked about a couple of teams that have been scuffling. Houston, on the other hand, still a work in progress, continuing to trade pieces off their offensive line. Weird stuff going on with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who is just straight up cut after they traded for him this offseason. Kind of some stuff going on off the field and within the locker room confines, not necessarily getting with the program, and that can happen with a 1-3 team compared to where he was in Philadelphia, hoisting the Lombardi Trophy, and those Philadelphia Eagles, I believe, hosting your Denver Broncos this Sunday, Nick. I mean, what a turnaround from the Cincinnati Bengals to Philadelphia Eagles and reuniting, let's say, visiting your old friend Vic Fangio.
Well, that's going to be a very interesting game within itself because Vic Fangio, I think he still is a little bitter about how things worked out here for him and the Denver Broncos. But I think right now at this point, he got the best of it because he's part of a reigning Super Bowl champion team. And his defense was just so dominating with their front four. And they continue to be that way, even though the Eagles' offense finds ways to win ball games like the Kansas City Chiefs did last year.
Yeah.
They just find ways to win games. And there's a lot of talk about Jalen Hurts, about not more about who he is, about who he isn't. And this whole concept that not a top 5 quarterback and he's winning the ball games and they're not asking him to do too much. I mean, am I not mistaken? I thought football was a team game. And when you have multiple pieces and you have a defense that can score turnovers or a special teams unit that can get you points too as well, I thought the idea was to take the pressure off the quarterback. Why are we criticizing quarterbacks because they're not throwing for Tony Romo type numbers?
Yeah, and all the success that Tony Romo has in the postseason, Jalen Hurts surpassed that just in one season, let alone 2 Super Bowl appearances. But again, we spent enough time on Dallas and Jerry and what kissing your sister would taste like, and that was strategic.
What?
That was strategic by you.
Wait, I must have missed that one. I'm sorry. What?
Oh, sure. I mean, listen, this is a tie. This is a team that did not win, and I criticized Russell Wilson for not really claiming himself a loser in that Dallas Cowboys game. When he said he answered the call, the critics that said that he was over the hill, couldn't get it done, this or that. Jerry Jones had kind of a moment there because the Dallas Cowboys did in fact not beat the Green Bay Packers, but it was a win for Jerry. Forget everybody else, forget the players. It was a win for Jerry because Micah was neutralized. So let's see Jerry Jones after his reaction as to what a tie is like in the National Football League, and that's what we have, Nick. I mean, pretty straightforward.
Wow. Yeah.
Your thoughts. Your thoughts.
There's so many ways that one could have explained the tie between the Green Bay Packers, known as though this beef with Micah Parsons, but I don't think that that's an ideal way to say it. It's like kissing your sister, and how does it taste? Whoa, man, I don't know. Listen, man, I don't know anything about that, man. And I would have chose a different way to bring something up. But the fact of talking about your sister and then adding insult to injury, talking about how does it taste? Yeah, not in my neck of the woods. No.
Yeah, especially with the cold sore going on with Jerry. Like, let's get. I never thought I'd be here, Nick, but let's just go back to talking about glory holes.
Oh boy.
So, Vic Fangio, huh? This Broncos offense against Cincinnati. I mentioned Vic Fangio, and I like the insight on the Broncos because that's the team that you cover on a day-to-day, and your reputation precedes itself as a former Bronco and residing in Denver, Colorado. But this is a Broncos offense that against the Bengals weren't necessarily looking out for those shot plays. Bo Nix was back on track, but I think their longest play is all under 30 yards. Meanwhile, Vic Fangio likes to keep the offense in front of him, the opposing offense in front of them. Now, Emeka Egbuka, and hey, shout out the Philadelphia Eagles, because it was like the Buccaneers was always that team that got the best of them in the regular season. Just a well-coached, well-disciplined Todd Bowles left outfit that, Baker just finds these ways to pull games, like a rabbit out of a hat. But it was too little too late. And so I just want to give credit to that. But they did give up a broken play, 77-yard touchdown to Emeka Egbuka. And then Bucky Irving had a big touchdown that Baker just magically gets this ball out on a swing pass, kind of a broken play. So the Eagles' defense is kind of susceptible to those kind of things. Is there a way that Sean Payton can dial up that offense to not necessarily break or bend the Vic Fangio defense, but keep the ball moving, keep the chains, progressing against a much better defense in Philadelphia?
Well, that's hard to say, Alex, because the Broncos have historically struggled starting really fast. And more importantly, here's a stat that I hope that fans start to look at. It's not me just trying to, throw shade, but it's a true stat. In 4 games, the Broncos have only scored 10 points in the fourth quarter. Until then, it was only 3. I mean, they got 7 in the fourth quarter against the Cincinnati Bengals, and that was against a defense that wasn't really good. Like, you got Trey Hendrickson, but after Trey Hendrickson, it's like, well, who else do you have? When you look at Philadelphia, it's a different beast up front because the Broncos did a great job, just like you look at Dallas on Micah Parsons. You double him, you run at him, you use someone to chip him. But when it comes to Vic Fangio's defense, he's got 4 guys who can, hurt you up front by themselves. The biggest issue for the Philadelphia Eagles is their secondary. That is where they are susceptible to big plays. Now, can Sean Payton dial up a couple of plays? Absolutely. The problem is that there's been about 5 plays this season that he's dialed up on like 4th and 2 or 4th and 1 that they really didn't hit because of poor execution. Now, he's going to try those same plays against Vic Fangio to back up that front 4. But how successful is he going to be? I don't know. And Vic Fangio said it himself. When he looks at, Bo Nix, he looks at Bo Nix like a Baker Mayfield, a guy who you just played. So the idea is keep him in the pocket, force him to play quarterback position, but allow your front 4 to actually get home and do work.
Yep. Meanwhile, that Eagles offense, it was a track meet for A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I wouldn't say not necessarily involved. A.J. Brown was targeted 9 times, but only resulted in a handful of catches. And the running game, Saquon Barkley, found pay dirt, but I think his longest rush was somewhere in the neighborhood, 15 yards. So not quite yet firing on all cylinders, but as you said, they always find a way to win, and it will be awesome, frankly, seeing these two lines going against each other in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Both have quality lines offensively, defensively, so that's really where this battle is going to be won. And listen, the Eagles executed. Lane Johnson banged up, and Vita Vea right there in the middle of the defense for the Bucs. So curious to see what they do against Denver. But the first game that kind of gets things started for Week 5, we have Thursday Night Football, another NFC West battle. We just had Cardinals-Seahawks, and this is sort of like the Big Brother version. We got 49ers-Rams, a pair of 3-1 teams for Thursday night. Nick, do you think Sean McVay could fight Bob Saleh like Liam Cohen thinks he can?
No. If we're talking about X's and O's, yes. Are we talking about good old-fashioned put them up fisticuffs? Absolutely not. And I don't even think Liam Cohen was ready for that because when you really think about it, if you really want to get after someone, Alex, you're not going to allow one person or one arm to stop you. You're going to make a concerted effort to get after that person.
No, but he made sure to make that effort, and shout out to Liam Cohen. He made sure to start chirping at Bob Saleh when he had each of his arms wrapped around one of the Jaguars' offensive linemen. A true hold me back, bro kind of moment. Hold me back, bro.
Yeah, it was, but Robert Saleh was moving forward.
Yes.
Like chess pieces. He's moving forward until another coach, 49ers coach, had to step in between. But I don't think that's a fight that Liam Cohen wants. Yeah, they won the fight on the field, which is the most important thing. They won the game. But in the future, I'll be really careful because Robert Saleh is like an elephant. He doesn't forget. And when you get to Indy at the combine,
receipts.
Don't be upset if he runs up on you, right? And be like, so what was that? So what you want to say, right? So I can easily see that happening, and maybe Liam Cohen saying, you know what, Timber's got the best of us, and see what had happened was, right? I can see that taking place.
The 49ers are interesting to me because all the concerns we had about the Niners, the Rams going in, was the health of Matthew Stafford. Puka Nacua was banged up at the end of last year. Meanwhile, it's the entire 49ers offense with the exception of Christian McCaffrey, right? You had Brandon Ayuk, who had not necessarily a setback, but John Lynch was finally a little transparent talking on local radio on KNBR about Brandon Ayuk not necessarily returning anytime soon, and Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings have been consistently banged up. But I think they were lucky to go 1-1, or sorry, 2-1 with Mac Jones starting under center. Brock Purdy comes back. 2-0. Brock Purdy comes back and they lose. He looks less than 100%, and they've got the teeth of that Rams defense coming up against them.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting because these two teams they really know each other well. And when you look at that NFC West conference, you have three of the same offenses in the same conference with Clint Kubiak, Sean McVay, and Kyle Shanahan.
All
So
3-1, by the way.
yeah, and it always comes down to who did it best. They both run the version of the same type of offense, but it comes down to any game, Alex. Who executes it the best? And right now, with a healthier team, you have to lean towards the Rams because there's no Nick Bosa. There's no Brandon Ayuk. And it just seems as though every single week there is a player who's either injured or going on IR for the 49ers. And I feel bad for them, man, because it just seems as though they have bad luck. If it were
Every year.
Yes, if it were me, I'll walk around, the stadium, Levi Stadium, and we're, at home with some sage or something like that. Even I would take it on the bus and I'm using sage. When we get to the hotel, I got sage everywhere because there seems to be a problem with the 49ers in staying healthy. But I will say this, though. With all of that said, Kyle Shanahan still is able to muster a competitive team opposed to other teams around the league.
He's Nick Ferguson, 10 years in the National Football League, spent time working with Kyle Shanahan and that 49ers team on the defensive coaching staff. You can find him at Nick Ferguson _25. I'm Alex Hardy. We are those guys. You see these guys over there. Well, what about those guys? We're doing our thing here every week. We are coming out with a couple of pods to preview the NFL week and one to recap. I don't know, Nick. I think because of the importance of the NFC West, but more importantly, the AL Wildcard, shout out those Boston Red Sox, I think we got to come back Thursday. We're going to get that Red Sox-Yankees series wrapped up no later than Thursday. And I just, look, a best-of-3 series, they're halfway there, but you got to love the heart and resolve of the team that comes back down 1-0. And 17 guys retired straight by top dog Garrett Crochet.
Yeah, you just had to just kind of fit that one in and stick it in my craw. But you know what? No matter. The Yankees are going to battle back like they often do. They often do. So I'm not worried about it. But you get a chance to go ahead and stick your chest out and gloat right now because you won't be on Thursday.
That's right. Well, we'll see if that's right or not. Nick, what do you have to say to the people on the way out of here before we do our football and clearly some baseball talk next time we see you?
I need to sprinkle some sage around here, man. I need some sage. I got to sprinkle some sage.